Hello and welcome to tonight's webinar. Welcome on behalf of the Early Career Nurses Network. It is a pleasure to welcome you to our webinar, Discovering Your Path in Independent Health and Social Care. I'm really excited about tonight's webinar. We've got you for an hour to learn most things about the independent health and social care and how you might tackle getting a job in it, and hear from lots of SMEs that we've got lined up. I'm really pleased that you could join us, and thank you for coming. Do feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. It's always nice to learn from each other as we go, and we've also got a Q&A that I'll talk to you a little bit more about in just a second. My name is Kendall Andreasen. I'm the professional lead here at the RCN for acute and emergency care and defence nursing, but I also look after our Early Career Nurses Network too, which keeps me quite busy. But it's a part of my portfolio that I really love, which is why I'm here hosting this webinar tonight. We've got a really cracking lineup for you. Next slide, please, Will. This is our agenda. So we're going to hear from two colleagues at the RCN. Vicky Sandy Davis is one of our RCN lead nurses in the independent health and social care sector. She's going to do an introduction to the sector, what this landscape looks like and what there is out there. And then Sam Preston is another RCN lead nurse for the independent health and social care sector, and she's going to give us some tips for applying for roles in the independent health and social care, where to look for jobs, etc. And then we have an early career nurse in the lineup too. Jenna Stocks has very kindly come to give us her lived experience, which I think is going to be really useful. We always make sure that we have that in our webinars, and it always goes down really, really well. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what Jenna's got to say, and about her first couple of years as a registered nurse. We've then got time for Q&A, so please do use the Q&A box at the top of your screen to pose your questions. However, if you would like to ask your question and come on camera, just put your hand up and we can facilitate that too. But either mechanism is good, either putting it in that Q&A box or putting your hand up and we'll have you on screen. I think that is everything I need to talk to you about right now. So we'll crack on to our content, and we'll start off with Vicky. Please, over to you.
Hi everyone, my name's Vicky Sandy Davis, and I'm the lead nurse for independent health and social care for the West Midlands region. We have 13 lead nurses at the RCN who work cover independent health and social care. So we cover the whole of the UK between us. I'm a learning disability nurse by profession, and there may be some learning disability nurses here, but the independent health and social care sector is very pertinent, particularly for people with learning disabilities, a lot of whom live and are supported in the sector. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we're referring to when we talk about independent health and social care. So sometimes people get a bit confused about what we're actually talking about. And essentially, independent health and social care covers all of the services that fall outside of the NHS. Different organisations refer to independent health and social care in different ways, and you might hear the term PVI, private, voluntary and independent sector, at different organisations. So of service provision. Independent health service provision refers to things like charities, social enterprises and privately run companies. There's a huge range of independent organisations across the sector. So I've got some examples here. So community teams, I'm sure you've all come across things like domiciliary care, things like district nursing, I suppose, is sometimes run independently. There are lots of different teams right across the country, and there are opportunities there for newly registered nurses. If you're a student, you might have had some placements with community teams in the independent sector. Nursing and care homes are what people usually think of when they think of independent healthcare, and the sector is so much more broad than just nursing and care homes. However, nursing homes and care homes provide a really fundamental linchpin across the whole of healthcare provision, and a lot of nursing and care homes are run independently. Respite care, so again, this is quite pertinent to people that I have supported over the years with learning disabilities. And you find that people with really complex needs that live at home with their families sometimes need a break, I suppose, and will send their loved ones for a period of respite. And there are lots of different kinds of respite units across the country. Again, a lot of them are run independently. You do find them in the NHS as well, but I would say that largely the respite care is run by independent sector organisations. Now, my background actually is in offender management and forensic mental disorder. So I've worked a lot with prison health, with the courts and the police. And a lot of prison healthcare provision now has been commissioned out to the independent sector. So there are organisations like Practice Plus, you may have heard of, G4S used to run a lot of prison health services. And these are run independently. I think that working with offenders is an incredibly interesting role, and there are lots of roles out there working with offenders, both with learning disabilities, with mental health, and in general practice, because the prisons, of course, are full of people with all sorts of health needs, and there are opportunities out there for newly registered nurses and insecure services. If there's any mental health or learning disability nurses here, I'm sure this is something that you'll be familiar with. That's not always known that general practice nurses are run independently to the NHS. They're actually managed by their GPs in their GP surgeries. And again, there are opportunities for general practice nurses who are newly qualified. Lots of hospices are run charitably, and this is a really important sector in the independent healthcare services, healthcare provision. End-of-life care is, of course, so important to all of us. And working in end-of-life care is an incredibly rewarding and actually really positive role to do. But hospices and end-of-life care are largely run independently and usually through charitable services. I've mentioned domiciliary care, and then there are specialist services, so fertility services, ambulance and transport. Substance misuse teams are often run independently as well. And there are lots of private hospitals cropping up around the country. These are generic hospitals, so similar to those run by the NHS, and the same kind of services are offered. So those are some examples of independent health service provision. There are other examples that some of them are really unusual. I think the most unusual one that I've heard of is a nurse that works in a monastery, which I think is really interesting. So there are lots of different roles out there, a vast range of services. And social care is slightly different. So this refers to services that are run by local authorities. And again, people automatically think of care homes. Quite often, care homes may or may not have nurses employed in them, but there are still opportunities out there to work in care homes as a qualified nurse. And then other examples, equipment and adaptations. So there's all sorts of adaptations that people need when they live in the community in independent settings, and quite often these are provided by independent companies. And then social and community support, so day centres, taking people out for social activities. People who live in the community and have health-related needs need a whole range of holistic support, as I'm sure you're aware. And a lot of these are provided and run by local authorities. Safeguarding, an important one. This is run by local authorities. And a lot of the work that's done in social care, of course, you'd be working with multidisciplinary teams with social care, occupational therapy, and so on. Mental health assessment and care for those mental health nurses who may or may not be with us. People who are living in the community or in secure services, in fact, that may need a mental health assessment. This is usually managed by local authorities. And finally, the other example that I've put is transport services. So people that need transport to and from hospitals. In fact, I've been talking about that to somebody today, and these are often run independently. Okay, so moving on. I'm trying to stick to time. I've got quite a lot of time left, so let's move on. So I just wanted to run through some of the myths about working in independent health and social care for newly registered nurses. Um, and quite often, working in this role, I've heard lots and lots of different stories from newly registered nurses and from final year students, particularly, who haven't realised that they can work outside of the NHS, that there are a huge range of roles out there that people can do as a newly registered nurse that fall outside of the NHS. So the first myth is that roles for newly registered nurses are definitely not restricted to the National Health Service, despite what you may hear. I've given some examples of services in the independent health and social care sector, and you've seen that there's just this vast, huge range of services out there, sometimes overlooked, sometimes not considered by newly registered nurses, but it's really important that you consider these roles when you qualify. So that's the first myth busted. Second myth. People don't realise that preceptorship is offered outside of the NHS in independent health and social care services. It's an area that's growing. There is lots of work being done at the moment to expand the offer of preceptorship in independent health and social care services. And you'll hear more about this later, I'm sure. So there are more and more providers offering preceptorship, and we know that as a newly registered nurse, it's really important to have that period of preceptorship to help you step into the world of being a qualified nurse with your own PIN number and having your own autonomy and accountability as a nurse. So don't think that there aren't providers outside of the NHS that offer preceptorship, because there are, and there are lots, and this is expanding drastically. So that is the second myth busted. Okay, let's move on to the third one. I've mentioned the range of roles in the independent sector. Now, it's interesting because just today, actually, I was delivering some training at a local nursing home, and they work with people with learning disabilities, with mental ill health, and with the elderly as well. So it's a nursing home that covers all sorts of different service users and services. I was with 11 qualified nurses, and the majority of those nurses had come out of the NHS and moved into the independent sector to work in social care, independent health and social care. And all of them said how much more satisfying it was to work in the roles that they were in compared to their previous roles. I shouldn't really say that, but they were very happily working in the independent sector. There were lots of opportunities for them. We did some very particular training about accountability, record keeping, and they all expressed how happy they were working in the sector, which was really quite satisfying for them. It was really positive. And we see people like that all the time. So the world of nursing isn't all about the NHS. I suppose that's what I'm trying to say. And there are a huge amount of roles across the independent sector, many of which you can apply for as newly registered nurses. And Sam will talk about how you can do that later. So that is the third myth busted, I think. So the fourth myth, there are opportunities for career progression throughout the independent sector. And we meet people all the time that have started off as newly registered nurses and worked their way through services and progressed to much more senior roles. One of the people I spoke to today was the head of nursing at the organisation that I was working with. And we meet people all the time that have joined the independent sector as a newly registered nurse and stayed in the independent sector throughout their career. So it's really important that you're aware that there are opportunities out there. There are opportunities for career progression. There are lots and lots of nurses that move into the independent sector and the social care sector and stay there for the whole of their career and work their way through various different kinds of roles. So that's the fourth myth that I think I have busted. I did notice then that somebody put something in the chat, but I missed it. So let me see if I can have a quick look. No, I don't think anybody did. I just wanted to check that because something popped up on my screen. So those are four myths that are busted, and that is an overview of some of the opportunities that are out there, and there are many. That's me done. So Just a final slide to say who I am, and I'm always happy to answer emails. So please do feel free to get in touch with any questions or queries or any support that you might need if you're a newly registered nurse and you're moving into the sector. Okay, so that's me done. Thank you.
Vicky, thank you so much. That was really illuminating. It's a huge area, isn't it? There's so
really
many
is.
different routes that you can go through and find some really meaningful work. And I think throughout my career, I've always thought about the fact that if you find your path and the path that you find meaningful and you get joy out of, you're going to be happier and you're going to be able to do better for your patients. So it's really important that people think about all routes so they can find their perfect one, whether that be in their early career or maybe later, having it in mind for later in their career, because we don't have to stay in the same place forever, do we? So thank you so much for that. That was super interesting. Caitlin did actually put something in the chat. Caitlin is one of our fantastic colleagues from RCN Scotland. She's popped an article that might interest some people about from Victoria Khan, posted on the RCN website, about someone's journey into the independent health and social care sector. It's called Everything But Bored, which I like the title of. So that's great. So thanks again, Vicky. We now have Samantha Preston Sam coming next. She's going to talk to us a bit more about tips on applying for those roles, where to look for jobs, and considerations about taking a role in the independent health and social care sector, which is going to be a really vast thing because it's such a vast area. It must be quite difficult to find those jobs sometimes. So I'm really interested in hearing about that. And I think it would be disingenuous for us not to mention that there are some people struggling to find jobs at the moment. So I'm sure many people on the call will be super interested to hear this section too. So over to you, Sam. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kendall. Thanks for your kind introduction. Yes, I am part of Vicky's team. I'm the lead nurse for independent health and social care in the East Midlands. And I've had a really, really long 25 plus years in the independent sector, and I've been extremely blessed with some of the experiences, teams that I've worked with, and also the outcomes for patients. Some of my proudest work has been done in a pharma role, changing practice in the NHS to make sure that neonates that were born with really low birth weights actually exited SCABU with higher birth weights, higher weights rather than their birth weight rate. And it's changing practices like that give better outcomes, that people forget happen outside of the secondary care setting. That's just an example. But importantly, you guys need to know where to find jobs and how to turn an application into a successful invite for invitation to interview, and also turn that interview experience into a job offer. So how do we best do that? There's lots of research that you need to do in advance of applying for jobs, because applying for jobs en masse is not a really good idea. You need to know that it's the right match for you, and we're going to look a little bit about how you go about doing that. And as I said, you need to do lots and lots of preparation. Once you've received a successful invite to interview, you need to really practice ready for interview, because even now I practice if I'm to go to an interview with 25 plus nearly 30 years experience. And it's your one chance to showcase your skills, your ability, and put forward the personality traits that make you the best candidate. So importantly as well, you're going to be investing a lot of time in preparing for your interview, but you want to know that if you're successful in gaining employment with that employer, that they're the right fit for you. And we're going to look at how you would do that in advance of interview. And then I have included some resources to help you along that journey. So let's get started. Research, what does that look like in practice? First of all, you need to learn as much as possible about the organisation that you're considering making application for. What kind of service do they provide? What are their standards like? Look at their CQC reports. Online, you'll often find patient and resident surveys that you can have a look at, and that will give you a true indication about how well they're providing care and nursing services to their staff, to their patients or residents. Talk to staff members in advance. Use your personal network and the network of your colleagues and peers, and find out what the reputation of that organisation is like. In advance of your interview, it might help you calm your nerves if you find out about who is interviewing you. What's their background? Do you have any common shared background or experience with that person interviewing you? You want them to buy you as much as you need to make sure that you're the right fit for them. So use your network. It's really important. Look at job sites. There are various job sites out there, as I'm sure you all know. The NHS website also has independent health and social care vacancies on there. I did look recently and found 4 within a small area for somebody who was looking for jobs. So don't think that you have to go to places like Indeed, and I know there are other search engines for jobs. And then really research the values of the organisation you're considering making an application to. Do they align with your own personal and professional values? Do they have a mission statement? And you'll get a bigger picture of whether the time you invest in application and going forward to interview is what you want to do. So that's the very first part of your research. But you also need to prepare really carefully. You need to think about what type of questions potentially am I going to be asked. And if you visit the job description, that will give you a guide on where or what the interviewers may question you about. So if, for example, like Vicky said, if you were applying into somewhere that was looking at mental health, providing a mental health service, that you would get an idea from their job description of the responsibilities that you would have in that role, and therefore the kind of competency questions that may come from that. So, for example, you would be probably asked about the Mental Health Capacity Act. So really think strongly about visiting your job descriptions where possible. Next, I would also look at, as I said, reread the roles and responsibilities whilst preparing your questions. The RCM website does have over 80 examples of interview questions, so please look out for that, and I have placed a link at the end of this presentation for those. Importantly, once you've decided to make application and you've been successful in receiving an interview from a provider, arrange to make a visit. Going into an environment and getting a feeling about that team and the service that they're delivering, and being around their patients or residents can be really insightful. It gives you an opportunity to ask staff questions, visitors and family and patients or residents questions. I used to ensure that my residents, when I worked in social care, interviewed my senior staff always, and I welcome people to visit before their interview so that they could get a feel for us. It was also a good opportunity for me to get a feel for them. Any good manager will welcome your visit with open arms. Importantly, once you have those prepared questions, you need to keep practicing them. Ask your peers, your colleagues, your fellow students, and your family members. My children are experts because they listen to me regularly prepare for interviews and presentations. There's no harm. It's all great learning for everybody. And be prepared to demonstrate, as I said before, your knowledge and competencies when answering those questions. Think of scenarios that you've had in practice where you have delivered good patient care, patient education, and where you've supported a colleague that may be struggling. These are all examples. They want to see that you're a good team member. As I've said, practice answering those questions. Do role plays and mock interviews wherever possible. During the interview process, never hesitate to ask them to repeat a question. There's 2 reasons you can do this: if you haven't heard or fully understood the question, but it can also give you time to process what's being asked from you and to take a breather. Even if you fully understood the question, gives you time to collect your thoughts. And then finally, I said it's really important, if you're going to take the time to go to interview and make a decision about a career journey with a provider, you need to really interview them. So How do you do that? It sounds really challenging, but it's actually really easy. You need to know that they're going to invest in you. We know there's a very few jobs out there, so you need to be as selective as they are. So you need to ask them questions about how they support their team to maintain competence and increase competencies. Ask them how about team achievements that they're proud of and why they were proud of those. It gives you an indication of the quality and the investment they have in things like CPD, and also celebrating the achievements of their team and the culture around learning and exceeding in their organisation. Ask them about team building activities. You might also ask them to explain one of their recent challenges as an organisation or a nursing team and how they overcame those. There's many other ways that you can test how invested they are in there. You may ask, as Vicky said, about their preceptorship programme. You may ask about how they help people prepare for career progression in terms of how they support them to develop new skills, but also potentially how, when opportunities for promotion come up, how they communicate that and how they share that information with the team, and how they champion their staff to progress. So that is really a whistle-stop tour of preparing for interview and doing your research. Word of mouth is really important. Use social media as well to look for job advertisements. LinkedIn is a very good place to look for opportunities and to really understand the sector more greatly. You'll see lots of information about research that's going on in social care and other areas, so you know who's at the heart of really being innovative in this sector. Thank you very much for listening. As I say, here are some useful links going forward, and I'm going to hand back now. Thank you.
Sam, thank you so much. That was super useful. You can never underestimate the utility of properly researching and practicing until everyone you know and love bored of you. And the power of the network. I think people love to help others. That's actually why we got into this job, isn't it? Whether that be our patients, but also each other. So I think putting yourself out there and using your network is also really useful. And I love the idea of interviewing them, because it should be two-way, because we know that if you find a place where you are supported and you do get access to CPD, you're more likely to find job satisfaction and stay in the role and be happy long term. So all of those things are so important. So thank you so much. There were a couple of things that I forgot to say at the start. Actually just one thing. We are being recorded, so everyone can watch this back later on, but I should have said that at the start. And also, please do ask your questions in the Q&A. We've had one question in already that we'll do our best to get to eventually. And thanks again, Sam. So we're over to Jenna now, and Jenna is an early career nurse now and has had a fantastically brilliant start to her career, and I'm really excited for her to share it all with you, so that you can learn from her experience and see how brilliant your first bit of your career can be. So thanks, Jenna, over to you.
Thank you. So bear with me, just going to try and make sure I'm working it okay. So my name's Jenna Stock. So I qualified in 2023, and in the short space of time, I think I've done quite a lot and I'm quite proud of. So I qualified from the University of Derby, and I got my last placement was a care home placement, and I really didn't want to do it, and I tried to change it, but I went to it with an open mind, and I'm so glad I did. So from then, I kind of reached out to the home I'm in, because it was nearby, and asked if they offered preceptorship, which they did. So I started that 2 days after leaving university, and then that was quite daunting, but they really was supportive. I then got the chance to go to like a clinical day and present about my journey from student, because I was a student in one of their homes. And then that got recognised, and I got put forward for a Nursing Times Award, Preceptee of the Year in 2024, which I won, which I'm very proud of. And it's still quite a pinch me moment now. And then I've been back and been a judge for the category I won in 2024. And my recent achievement is I've just become a unit manager in my job role. So yeah, quite a lot. So I'm a mental health nurse and a unit manager now. Sorry, I've just got. So I provide nursing care to adults living with complex needs arising from mental health, neurological and physical health needs. And not only am I a nurse, I'm a very good party organizer, football player, you name it, we do it. So it's a good job to be in. I think you do a wide range of things and things you wouldn't think you'd be doing. So I found when I was training, and a lot of placements was within the NHS, there was a lot of negativity, and a lot of nurses would say, you can't go to a care home, you'd become de-skilled, there's not really many opportunities for you. So I felt quite negative. So obviously when I got my placement at a care home, I thought, oh, I really don't want to do that. And then but I think I've done so much, and I've had so many opportunities. And like with students now, looking after students, I really ingrain that in them to like take this opportunity, and there's a lot more outside of the NHS. And I'm very supportive with my students, like how I've been supported, and I think that makes a massive difference to students. I think if you're very nurturing, caring, understanding, that gives them a better experience than themselves. So, as I've already said, I think it's absolutely crucial that the environment you're in, you're gonna thrive. So like going back to what Samantha said, like go into places, testing them out, because I think you've got to really fit somewhere to be able to progress and shine, and I think that's with everybody around you supporting you and making you feel like you can achieve that bit more is and where I am now, it's such a like family kind of environment. Everybody like looks after each other and everybody cares for each other. So the pros to coming into social care or anywhere outside of the NHS is you get to really know the people you're looking after. You know them inside out, and I think that's you need to know who you're looking after to be able to advocate for them, to notice when they may be becoming unwell, and understanding people as well, and that it's like very rewarding as well. Look at it when you come in every day and they're happy to see you, and Christmas and birthdays, or they remember your birthday. They care about you because you may be their family don't come and see them, So you might be the only person they see from day to day. And I've not really got anything bad to say about my job role at the moment. I've never once dreaded coming to work. I look forward to coming to work, even over the Christmas period. It's just finding that balance, but I like to come and see the people I'm looking after and celebrating special moments with them. And yeah, that's my journey so far.
That is a brilliant journey. Thank you so much, Jenna, for sharing it with us. I really love your points about being open-minded and taking opportunities that come to you, and really putting yourself out there, and the fruits of your labour so far. It's been brilliant. Well done on that Preceptee of the Year award. That's really fantastic. Well done indeed. So thanks again, Jenna. We will move on to the Q&A shortly. I'll just prompt you all again. Please do pop your questions in the chat. That would be super useful. And while you get thinking about that, I do have a little 5 reasons to join the RCN as an early career nurse slide that I might share with you while you think about those questions. So Will, if we could have that up again. Sorry, I realise you've only just taken it down. I'm sure it's coming. So there's lots of reasons to join the RCN, and here are some of them. So this is our early career, this is our 5 reasons to join the RCN overall slide, and it's just in case any of you are not RCN members already, we'd love you to consider joining. It's brilliant for professional development. We have all sorts of webinars just like these, but we also have lots and lots of professional resources on all different disciplines. There's lots of workplace support. You can get legal advice. The member support is pretty vast, as you can see there. Immigration advice, career coaching. The career coaching is actually fantastic. And all of the career resources are very, very good. And you can call the careers team and arrange an interview. So do use the QR code at the bottom of that screen if you are interested in finding out more. I would also love you to join the Early Career Nurses Network. So just Google RCN Early Career Nurses Network to join the forum, which is absolutely which is absolutely free if you are already a member, and then you can get to hear about these things a little bit more easily. And my wonderful colleague Caitlin has just put 2 links in the chat already, so that's brilliant. Thank you. So we will move on to the Q&A now. So we'll just have the screens off, Will. Thank you so much. So we've got one from Valerie. Does the RCN help international student nurses with job preparation and experience-related issues during and after training from postgrad courses? That's a very specific question. Does anyone feel ready to answer it? Probably Vicky or Sam. Don't worry, Jenna, you're off the hook for this one.
Yeah, I can have a go.
Thank you.
I'm sure Sam will
as well.
Carry on.
Yeah.
The RCN offers a huge amount of support to international nursing students and qualified nurses. It's quite a big focus of the RCN to make sure that people come into the country and are settled into health services and receive as much support as they can. And it's important to remember that we have our own in-house immigration service. So any questions around visas or legal issues can also offer support with that. International nurses can access all of the resources that we offer for all of our members. So you're looking at job preparation and experience related issues. Yeah, so there's all of the resources that we offer with job preparation. There's lots of links in the chat here, so you can have a look there. But we also we can offer specific individual support for our international nursing students, registered nurses, and all of our members really. So yeah, the RCN does help, to answer your question, international nursing students, and it's an important part of our role actually. I don't know whether you want to add anything to that, Sam.
Yeah, I think it's a huge part of our role. I recently sat with some internationally educated nurses who aren't particularly new to the UK, but really wanted that support to help them build their relationship with their MDT and feel more that they could really be the advocates for their residents. They also found that our medicine management is far more complex in England and the UK than perhaps it is in their home country. So at the moment, I'm developing something to help them sort of recognise which medications, for example, are really not first choice for people over the age of 65. As Vicky said, each regional nurse can support, but also we have professional leads. We have a frailty lead, for example, and we can signpost people to professional leads. So when you say about job preparation and experience related issues, if there is something in practice that myself or Vicky are not experts in, we have that wealth of experience in the college that we can signpost you to as well.
Brilliant. That's really useful. Thank you so much. So we've got lots of questions coming in, which is brilliant. I have another one here. Do nurses working in the independent health and social care sector have less workers' rights than elsewhere? And what is the situation with indemnity cover? Two very good technical questions. Sam, you've boldly taken yourself off mute. Thank you.
So as Vicky will tell you, I'm an expert on the indemnity cover because I support, as a national team, as a national piece of work, I support agency nurses who do not have indemnity from employers because they're not employed. So RCN membership does give you indemnity cover, but really importantly is all employers that provide a service to patients, residents, and individuals must indemnify their staff. That's a legal requirement, and you're perfectly within your rights to ask for that information, and it's part of revalidation. You have to also show that you have relevant indemnity insurance as you revalidate with the NMC. Red flag should go up if that is not shared with you pretty immediately. In advance, the other part of that question, Kendall, can you just reiterate that for me? Oh, terms and conditions.
Yes. Okay,
so I think that UK citizens obviously have, it's important to say UK citizens have the same employment rights in the independent sector as they would have in the NHS or social care. Terms and conditions do vary in terms of, importantly, I would say the biggest difference may be things like sick pay and the qualifying periods for those things, and maternity leave. And also periods of notice do vary, and that can vary in the NHS in terms of more senior roles rather require longer periods of notice, longer probation periods as well. So I think that it is very different across both sectors. And you need to really read and understand your terms and conditions prior to signing any contract. And again, you can also speak to the RCND team about your contract and get some advice on that before you sign. Too few people look at their contract in detail, and it does catch people out. So I think, again, we talked about preparation for interview, but once you're in receipt of that, there's a lot of preparation you need to do and reading to make sure you're comfortable with signing that contract. I hope that's a good enough explanation.
I think that was super comprehensive. Thank you so much. So I'm going to leave this one to last, but I'm going to do a teaser of it now so you can think about it. What has been your most rewarding thing about your career in the independent health and social care sector so far? But I feel like that's a nice thing to end on. So we'll do that towards the end. We still have plenty of time for questions, folks, so please do bring them in. I'm just looking at the Q&A now because actually there are a few. Okay, are there any NICU or neonates related independent career options? I'm sure there are. There are not. There are not. No. Sam, go ahead. Sorry, please correct me.
So my experience was as a registered nurse, but it was as a clinical education facilitator. So I worked for a pharmaceutical company that delivered parental nutritions to preterm neonates. So that was how I came to be working, but you would need comprehensive post-registration experience before you apply to the pharmaceutical industry as a clinical commercial nurse, and they usually require either intensive care experience or very acute nursing, so A&E, for example, just to give you an idea.
But the opportunities are there, maybe
Yes.
not so much for newly registered nurses, but maybe get some experience beforehand.
That's really useful. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're here. There are some more coming in. Oh, interesting. How do newly qualified nurses find the change in nurse to patient ratios in social care in comparison to the hospital environments? That's a super interesting question. I guess it probably varies widely, but Sam, please go ahead.
So the complexity or acuity of patients in social care is obviously not as complex as in the secondary sector. But you do have long-term conditions to manage, and you have exacerbation of those long-term conditions as well. So I didn't find the transition from secondary care into social care shocking at all. And I think, again, this is about doing your homework on who you choose to work with in the sector, and knowing that the management within those organisations have a very forward-thinking and a proactive approach to their residents' and patients' care, so that there are lots of systems in place to support you out of hours, and also to proactively evaluate the needs of residents and patients regularly, so you can foresee declines and then put in place additional support if it's needed. An example to you would be that when I work with residential residents, on admission, we would start talking about, literally within days of admission, we would talk about what their wishes were for end of life. So you're proactively, while they still have capacity, putting those plans in place and preparing for what their wishes are. So that proactive approach really helps with ratios. Of course, we all have emergencies, and that's where the out of hours support. The proactive approach to managing complex conditions as well, so that you have everything at your disposal, end of life drugs in, for example, in for those patients in advance of them starting the latter stages of their life, and also things like having antibiotics for somebody who for episodes of exacerbation if they're known to have recurrent chest infections, so that your GP knows you can immediately act upon it. Those are just a couple of examples. I think it very often gets spoke about ratios, but it's so much more than ratios of staff, because of course you're also backed up by amazing healthcare teams of healthcare support workers who know their residents inside out, back to front, and I'm sure Jenna and Vicky would agree with that. So you're not a lone practitioner, you have the family of your team behind you. And also as well, we have family members and volunteers as well that support you.
I think just to add to that, so just by way of explanations, Sam and I work very closely together, but we're from very different backgrounds. So Sam's mentioned the type of areas she's worked in. I've worked more in secure care, prison health, that sort of thing. So it's also dependent on the service that you work in. And I have a feeling that Jenna might agree with this because of the environment that you work in, Jenna. So working with people with acute mental health problems, profound and multiple learning disabilities and physical disabilities, things like offender health and that sort of thing, you might find that the ratios in comparison to similar environments in the NHS are probably the same. So if you're working in for example, in a secure unit with people who are acutely mentally ill, then you're going to need people who have, I suppose you're going to need a higher number of nurses there. I'm not really stating this very well, but you might find that the ratios are similar to what you would find in the NHS because of the complex needs that people present with. Jenna, I don't know whether you got anything to add to that, because I know that you work at, I know Exemplar
Yeah, so
deal
it's
with
quite
lots of people with,
complex needs,
yeah,
so they've all got a variety of different
yeah,
conditions. But I do feel like your team, your healthcare assistants, they're like the backbone of
yeah,
what I do. We do have emergency situations like anywhere, but it's when you get trained, it's acting fast, it's picking up them signs, it's following the basics you would have got taught all throughout university. And you have got support, so you've always got 111, and I don't think any question is a silly question. If you're not sure and you don't know, just ask, because I'd rather ask and feel silly for that moment, but me knowing that my service users are safe, looked after, and I can go home not. So I always say that to my not my students, but students I look after. Just ask me anything, just always ask, always be sure. And then even if sometimes if you ask and then you're not comfortable with what you've been told to do, you can always ask somebody else. So always feel like comfortable in what you're going to do, and like and confident. You've got to be confident in what you're doing.
I suppose the
Yeah.
takeaway from that is that regardless of the nurse to patient ratios, never underestimate the power of the support workers that are supporting you, because generally speaking, they're amazing, and their skills are just brilliant, really. So yeah, I'd say that the nurse to patient ratios are probably similar, but you are surrounded by a really supportive team in whatever service you work in.
Great. Good discussion, thank you. I just want to draw your attention before we move on to the next question, which is actually aimed at Jenna, to the feedback survey, which is the most recent note in our chat. We'd love you to provide feedback on this so we can steer the next piece of early career nurse activity and tailor it to your needs. So thank you in advance for completing that for us. Thank you, thank you. There's a question here about pay, Jenna. So when for your work now, it asks about how you're getting your monthly salary. I assume it's in a pretty similar way to our colleagues who work in the NHS. Do you know if there's any
So I
nuance
just
there?
get paid every 4 weeks, so it's on a rolling. That means so in a year I get paid 13 times instead of 12 if you was getting paid monthly. So yeah,
Super, thank you so much. So I think we'll do one more question before we talk about our most rewarding thing. And I'm just working through my list here. I'm sorry, we won't get through all of them, but we will. I'm just trying to find the one that I'm trying to think of. So this is about a functional assessor, so it's a pretty niche question. We've got a nod. What tends to be the role of a functional assessor or nurse assessor, and how do they work with patients? If that's it. Thank you, Sam.
These are people receiving PIP benefit that need either to be on make an application for that benefit assessed or reviewed. You do need quite a lot of experience to make application for one of these roles, because you need sort of quite broad skill base, and I'm aware that the report writing for these roles is very, very lengthy, and takes up a lot of the time. Forgive me if I just had some noise in my background there. So I think again, this is about research. Reach out to your peers and colleagues to ask about what skills and competencies are needed to fill this role. I do know that they are advertised almost continuously. And again, I would flag, why is that case? Because I think they're very demanding roles, I'd be very honest, from feedback I've had, and quite a commitment and a lot of work to be completed in a very short space of time with some tight league times.
I think the other thing to bear in mind is that I'm not sure what the opportunity would be for preceptorship in those kinds of roles.
Yeah.
As a newly registered nurse, I don't think, well, it's complete assumption actually, but I don't think there'll be any opportunity for a preceptorship period. But I might be wrong.
No, it sounds likely, doesn't it? It's why all of those important interview questions are so vital when you're doing your interview process. Super, thank you so much. Okay, so we've got 5 minutes left, which will allow me to ask you what your most rewarding thing about your career in the independent health and social care sector has been before doing my thank yous and a wrap up. So, Jenna, do you feel ready to go first with that one?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So I think it's feeling accepted by the people I care for because of all their different needs, behaviours and things like that. It can really put a barrier to delivering care. But I think if they accept you and they feel what's the word? They feel trusting in you. I think that's my most reward. That I think everybody here I've got a really good relationship with. So yeah.
That's a beautiful answer. Thank you so much. And Vicky, can I ask you to go next?
Yeah, okay. So for me, and it's not really just about working in social care, it's about being a learning disability nurse. So the thing that I like most about being an elderly nurse and working in social care is the opportunity to be really creative, to build really good relationships with people, to find out all about them in a really holistic way. And to think outside the box, really, to meet people's needs. So the people that I've worked with have very specific needs. And because they present in such a huge range of ways, you have to think quite creatively. And you have to be very autonomous, really, to be able to meet someone's needs in the best way that you can. So it's all about relationship building. It's all about creativity. It's all about thinking outside the box. And that's kind of the person I am, really. So working in social care and as a learning disability nurse suits me in those respects.
Sounds super fun and very rewarding. Thank you. All right, Sam.
So I mentioned right at the beginning of my presentation, one of the proudest parts of my career was seeing those neonates leave SCBU at a higher birth weight than their birth weight. But actually, one of the things that I've found hugely rewarding in my career in both pharmaceutical world and in social care is empowering others to be a better practitioner or a better carer. I was once told I wouldn't get a member of staff through their care certificate, so I made sure I did. And there was never a prouder moment than that guy holding that care certificate that everybody else had failed him before to get him through in 2 years prior to my history. And that individual went on to do level 3. So I think for me, empowering others in our sector is incredibly rewarding.
Beautiful answer as well. Lovely. Thank you all. So thank you, Jenna, Vicky and Sam, for your wisdom this evening. We really appreciate it. And for everyone backstage. So Ben, Jitan, Caitlin and Will, I really always appreciate your support with all of these things. One day we'll bring your faces on screen. And thank you all for coming and listening. There's been a whole host of links in chat in that chat. So do peruse that before you sign off to make the most of all of the resources the RCN has and wider, in fact. And do fill out our feedback survey. We would really appreciate it just so we can know how we're doing. And I will say thank you again to all and good night.